It was supposed to be just another holiday party. A boring work function I'd agreed to attend to make my wife, Emily, happy. I wasn't much for parties, but she loved them. Emily thrived in the spotlight. Her perfect smile, quick wit, and effortless charm always drew people to her. She was the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. I used to love that about her. We had been married for 9 years. I won't say it was perfect, but I thought we were solid. Sure, things had gotten routine lately. Emily had been more distant, staying late at work, spending more time on her phone, but I chalked it up to stress. People change over time, right? That's what I kept telling myself. That night, we were running late. Emily came down the stairs wearing a red dress, that red dress. The one she'd worn on our anniversary a couple of years ago. It hugged her curves in all the right places, her blonde hair cascading in soft waves. She looked stunning, and for a moment, I forgot about all the little things that had been bothering me lately. "Ready?" she asked, flashing me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I grabbed the keys and we headed out. The party was already in full swing when we arrived. Emily disappeared almost immediately, claiming she needed to say hi to a few people. I didn't think much of it at first. That was Emily, always the social butterfly. I grabbed a drink and made small talk with a few of the guys from her office. They were nice enough, but I could feel my patience wearing thin. About an hour in, I realized I hadn't seen Emily in a while. I wandered around the crowded room, scanning faces and dodging tipsy coworkers. Then I noticed the hallway leading to the back patio. It was quieter there, the music muffled. I thought maybe Emily had stepped outside for air. That's when I heard it, her laughter. Soft but unmistakable. The kind of laugh she used to save just for me. My stomach twisted, but I told myself to calm down. It's nothing. I moved closer, stepping into the shadows of the hallway. And that's when I saw her. Emily was standing there, too close to a man I didn't recognize. His hand was on her lower back, her face tilted up toward his, a playful smile dancing on her lips. They looked like a couple, like two people who shared a secret. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. And then it happened. She leaned in, her lips brushing his ear as she whispered something. His hand moved up her arm, and she laughed again, that laugh. My laugh. I don't know how long I stood there. Felt like an eternity. I should have confronted them right then and there, but I couldn't. Instead, I stepped back into the shadows, unseen. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. I couldn't process what I'd just witnessed. About 20 minutes later, Emily came back into the main room like nothing had happened. She spotted me, smiled brightly, and made her way over. "Having fun?" she asked, slipping her arm through mine. I stared at her, trying to keep my face neutral. "Yeah," I lied. "Great party." She didn't notice the tightness in my voice or the way I avoided looking at her. She was too busy checking her phone again. The screen lighting up with a notification she quickly dismissed. I clenched my fists at my sides. When the party finally ended, Emily was all smiles as we said our goodbyes. But in the car, the silence was deafening. She didn't seem to notice my clenched jaw or the fact that I hadn't said much since we left. "You're quiet tonight," she said, her voice light. "Everything okay?" I glanced at her, forcing a small smile. "Just tired." She nodded, leaning back against the seat with a contented sigh. She thought I was upset, maybe bored, maybe moody, but in reality I was planning. Because Emily didn't know that I had seen everything. And while she thought I was sulking, I was already 2 steps ahead. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next morning, Emily woke up in her usual cheery mood, as if the night before had been just another harmless party. She hummed to herself while pouring coffee, wearing that same red dress like it wasn't now tainted in my eyes. I sat at the table, my mind racing with every moment I'd witnessed, every whisper and touch. "Good morning," she chirped, setting my mug in front of me. "Morning," I replied flatly, pretending to scroll through my phone. I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her watching me, just for a second. "You seemed off last night," she said carefully. Everything okay? I met her gaze finally and forced a smile. Just work stress. That answer satisfied her and she moved on. Good, I thought. Let her think I'm distracted. Let her believe everything's fine. Because I needed her guard down. That day, while Emily went out for one of her errands, I stayed home and started piecing together the truth. I wasn't ready to confront her yet. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. I wasn't about to let her twist the narrative. I started with her phone. I'd noticed lately that she carried it everywhere, bathroom, laundry room, even while cooking. It was always in her pocket or hand, like it was glued to her. But she had gotten too comfortable, too confident. She didn't lock her messages, and I knew her passcode. It was her sister's birthday. She had no idea I knew that. When she left her phone charging on the kitchen counter, I pounced. The messages were buried deep in a group chat, but it didn't take long to find them. At first, there was nothing suspicious, just casual talk with coworkers. But then I spotted a thread pinned to the top, labeled simply M. My stomach dropped. I opened it, and there it was, Mark. The conversation wasn't explicit, not yet, but the tone was there. Flirty jokes, subtle compliments, and an undercurrent of intimacy that no colleague had any business sharing with my wife. Mark, last night was perfect. You're addictive, Emily. Stop. You'll get me into trouble, smirking face. I felt sick. My heart pounded in my ears as I scrolled up, catching more messages. Plans for lunches, excuses to leave early, and little reminders of inside jokes. It wasn't just flirting. It was familiarity. I took screenshots and sent them to my own email. You'll need this, I told myself, for what comes next. That night, Emily curled up beside me on the couch, acting like nothing had changed. She tucked her feet under her, leaning into me as we watched TV. The audacity of it made my blood boil. She thought I didn't know. She thought she was clever. Are you working late tomorrow? I asked, keeping my tone light. Yeah, she replied without missing a beat. Another meeting. Ugh, so boring. She rolled her eyes, like she wanted sympathy. I smiled to myself, just enough for her not to notice. That sucks. Don't work too hard. Oh, I won't. She laughed and turned back to the TV, resting her head on my shoulder. The next day, I took action. I left work early, claiming I wasn't feeling well. In reality, I was following her. I knew she wasn't at a meeting. Mark was the meeting. I parked a block away from the upscale restaurant downtown, the same one I'd seen mentioned in their texts. It was a sleek, modern spot, one I hadn't been to with her in years. From my car, I had a clear view of the entrance. It didn't take long before Emily arrived, dressed in a way that made my chest tighten. Effortlessly beautiful, in that way that used to be for me. 5 minutes later, he showed up. Mark. He was everything I'd expected. Tall, confident, with the kind of cocky smile that made me want to put my fist through the dashboard. Emily greeted him with a soft touch on his arm. Her head tilted up as she laughed at something he said. The sight of it made bile rise in my throat. I watched as they were led to a table near the window, where they sat close, too close. Mark leaned in, whispering something that made her smile, and her hand brushed his. My wife. My wife. I sat there for nearly an hour, watching their little lunch meeting unfold. I don't know how I stayed calm. I don't know how I didn't march inside and turn the entire restaurant upside down. But I didn't. I stayed in my car, taking pictures from a distance, cataloging every damning moment. When they finally stood to leave, Mark held the door for her, his hand grazing her lower back. Emily turned to him, smiling softly, like she used to smile at me. As they disappeared down the street, I sat back in my seat, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I felt the betrayal sink in deeper than it had the night of the party. I'd seen enough, but I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Let her think I didn't know. Let her dig her own grave. Because while she thought I was oblivious, I was planning. And when the time came, I'd make sure the truth destroyed everything she had built. The days that followed were a test of patience. Emily continued her little charade, acting like the perfect wife. She'd hum while cooking, ask me about my day, and occasionally flash me the same bright smile I used to love. I played along, matching her energy, letting her believe I was none the wiser. But every time I watched her, all I could see was him. Mark, the man who thought he could take what wasn't his. I'd gathered more than enough evidence by now. Photos from the restaurant, texts I'd pulled from her phone, and little details Emily had let slip without realizing it. But this wasn't about snapping and confronting her. That would be too easy, too satisfying for her. No, I needed her to feel the weight of this betrayal, to see her world fall apart piece by piece. One evening, Emily came home a little later than usual. She'd claimed she was stuck in traffic, but I knew better. I'd planted a GPS tracker on her car 2 days earlier. It wasn't hard. She never questioned when I asked to clean her car. The little device was hidden under the dashboard, invisible unless you knew where to look. I opened the tracking app on my phone and studied her route. Sure enough, she hadn't been anywhere near work. She'd driven to a gym across town. One Mark happened to check in at regularly on Instagram. When she walked into the house, all flushed and glowing like she'd had a great workout, I gave her a small smile. "How was traffic?" I asked casually. Emily froze for just a second, but she recovered quickly. "Awful. Took forever to get out of downtown." She dropped her gym bag by the door and walked into the kitchen, still oblivious to the fact that I knew she hadn't been anywhere near a traffic jam. I followed her, leaning against the counter as she poured herself a glass of water. "Oh, that's weird," I said, watching her carefully. "I thought downtown was pretty clear tonight." Her hand paused, mid-pour. For a split second, her mask slipped. But then she laughed. "I guess I was in the wrong lane or something. You know how it is." "Oh, I know how it is," I thought, my blood boiling under my calm exterior. "Yeah, probably." I let it drop. She was good at lying, I'd give her that. But the cracks were starting to show, and I knew it was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. The next day, I decided to expand my investigation. I wasn't just satisfied with knowing what Emily was up to. I wanted to know everything about Mark. It didn't take much. People like him loved to leave breadcrumbs. His Instagram was public, a carefully curated stream of gym selfies, luxury dinners, and inspirational quotes about winning at life. I clicked on one of his tagged photos and started connecting dots. His friends, his favorite hangouts, even his workplace, all there just waiting for me to use. I found his LinkedIn next. Sales manager at some mid-level tech company. A position that probably made him feel important but wasn't nearly as impressive as he thought it was. And then I hit the jackpot. His company had an employee directory. Emails, phone numbers, supervisors. Everything I needed. I saved it all. Patience, I reminded myself. One step at a time. That weekend, Emily announced she'd be visiting her sister. Another lie. I nodded, playing the part of the understanding husband. "Tell her I said hi," I said with a smile. She kissed my cheek, grabbed her purse, and headed out the door, completely unaware that I was tracking her every move. I waited 5 minutes, then followed her. She didn't go to her sister's place. Instead, she drove to a small hotel on the outskirts of town. My stomach twisted as I parked a safe distance away and watched her get out of the car. She looked around, almost like she was checking to make sure no one was watching, before disappearing through the lobby doors. I didn't need to see Mark to know he was there. I sat in my car, staring at the entrance for what felt like hours. I didn't go inside. I didn't storm up to the room. That's what Emily would expect. Some dramatic confrontation where she could twist the blame back on me. No, I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, carefully adding another time-stamped entry to the growing list of her lies. When Emily came home later that evening, she was glowing. Her hair was tousled, her makeup slightly smudged, but she looked happy, happier than she'd looked with me in months. "Did your sister have a good time?" I asked when she walked through the door. She smiled at me, kicking off her heels. "Yeah, we had a great day. Lots of catching up." "Liar." "That's good," I replied, forcing a smile. "You deserve a break." Her smile faltered just for a moment, like she wasn't expecting me to say something kind. Good. Let her wonder. I followed her movements carefully that night, cataloging every glance, every excuse. She didn't realize I was watching her. She didn't realize I knew. But the walls were closing in. And soon, she'd have nowhere left to hide. By Monday morning, I had everything I needed. Emily was still oblivious, smiling like the world hadn't already shifted under her feet. I wasn't rushing this. I wanted her to feel every second of the fallout when it came crashing down. That evening, she was late again. Working late turned into her stumbling through the door at 10 p.m. with a flimsy excuse about a project running over. "You've been working late a lot lately?" I said, keeping my tone neutral as I sipped my coffee. She froze, mid-step, before shrugging casually. "Big deadlines coming up, you know how it is, right?" I said, eyes fixed on her. "Maybe I should visit your office one day. Bring you lunch." Her smile wavered. "That's sweet, but there's really no need." "Course not," I thought. That night, I checked the tracker on her car. She hadn't been anywhere near her office. Instead, she'd driven to Mark's apartment. I stared at the glowing map on my phone, the little red that marked her betrayal. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was fact. The next day, Emily's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. "Mark." I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already knew what their messages said. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table, her phone lighting up with notifications every few minutes. I stared at it, calm but resolute. This was the last time I'd let her disrespect me under my own roof. When Emily came downstairs, dressed for work, she paused. My silence must have thrown her off. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said slowly, standing up. "Hey, I'm thinking about surprising you at the office later. Lunch? Maybe I can meet some of your coworkers." Her eyes widened, and for the first time, panic flashed across her face. "Oh, you don't have to. I'll probably be too busy." I smiled coldly. "No problem. I'll let you know if I change my mind." She nodded too quickly, grabbing her purse and leaving without another word. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and whispered to myself, "Soon, Emily. Very soon." That afternoon, I followed her again, but this time I didn't just observe, I recorded. I parked a safe distance from Mark's apartment complex and watched as Emily's car rolled into the lot. She didn't even hesitate. She stepped out, checking her reflection in the car window, and disappeared inside. It was becoming a pattern, one that even she wouldn't be able to deny soon. This time, though, I wasn't content with just watching. I needed something undeniable, something so damning it would leave no room for excuses. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera, zooming in on the building entrance. And just like clockwork, there he was, Mark. He came out about 10 minutes later, grinning like a man who thought he was untouchable. Emily followed close behind, her hand brushing against his arm in a way that turned my stomach. He leaned in, whispered something that made her laugh, and then he kissed her, right there, in broad daylight. I didn't move. I didn't shout. I didn't confront them. I just recorded, steady as a rock, my hands no longer shaking. When the kiss ended, they shared one last glance before Mark headed to his car. Emily got back into hers, as if nothing had happened. I stopped the video, watching it back to make sure I had exactly what I needed. Perfect, I thought. When Emily got home that evening, she acted like everything was normal, like she hadn't been wrapped around another man earlier that day. "Hey, babe," she said, setting her bag down and walking into the kitchen. "How was your day?" "Uneventful," I replied, glancing at her over the rim of my coffee cup. "How about you? Long day at the office?" She froze for half a second before smiling. "Yeah, meetings all day. Liar." I stared at her, studying the ease with which she delivered that lie, how she didn't even flinch anymore. It made me realize something. She'd been doing this for longer than I'd thought. She'd perfected this act. But I wasn't playing along anymore. "Sounds exhausting," I said, my voice calm. "You must be starving. Why don't I order us something special?" Her face lit up, relieved. "Sure, that sounds great." Emily didn't realize it yet, but her world was about to implode. I'd seen enough. I had the evidence. And now it was time to set the stage. As I pulled out my phone to place an order, I sent the video of her and Mark to my laptop. One more step closer. The next morning I woke up early. Emily was still asleep, curled up like nothing in the world was wrong. I stared at her for a moment, wondering if she ever felt guilt. If she ever thought twice about the lies she told so effortlessly. Not anymore, I reminded myself. This wasn't the woman I'd married. I got out of bed quietly, booted up my laptop, and stared at the video I'd taken yesterday. Watching it again didn't hurt like I thought it would. If anything, it solidified my resolve. I saved the video, along with the photos, screenshots, and timestamps, into a folder titled, For Emily. A little dramatic, maybe, but fitting. By the time Emily came downstairs, I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee and scrolling aimlessly on my phone. She walked in, yawning and stretching, her usual morning routine of pretending nothing was wrong. "Morning," she mumbled, heading for the coffee pot. "Morning," I replied casually, watching her out of the corner of my eye. She paused. I could feel her looking at me, as if trying to gauge my mood. "Are you sure you're okay? You've been quiet lately." Quiet? I almost laughed at the irony. But instead, I leaned back, feigning nonchalance. "Just been thinking a lot lately." "Oh?" she asked, pouring her coffee. "Yeah," I said, keeping my tone light. "About us. About trust. About honesty." Her back stiffened. It was subtle, but I caught it. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully, turning to face me. I smiled. "Nothing, Em. Just reflecting." Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion flickering in her expression. "You're acting weird." "Not as weird as you," I wanted to say. Instead, I shrugged, taking another sip of coffee. "Maybe I'm just tired." She didn't buy it. I could tell. The Emily I knew could sense when something was off, and for the first time, she was the one scrambling. That was fine by me. "Hey," she said after a moment, her voice turning sweet, too sweet. "Why don't we do something tonight? Dinner? Just the two of us." She was trying to get ahead of me to reset the narrative, but it was too late. I smiled faintly. "Sure, that sounds nice." That evening, Emily dolled herself up again. Hair curled, makeup flawless, a black dress that she always claimed was just for me. She was trying too hard, and I knew why. Something in her gut told her the walls were closing in. We went to a little Italian place across town, one of her favorites. She made small talk the entire drive there, filling the silence with meaningless chatter. I nodded, responded when I needed to, but my mind was elsewhere. By the time we sat down, the tension between us was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. Emily swirled her wine glass nervously, forcing a bright smile. "This is nice," she said. "We haven't done this in a while." I nodded, meeting her eyes. "Yeah, it's been overdue." She seemed relieved at that. For the next hour, she tried to act like the perfect wife. Laughing at jokes I didn't tell, talking about plans for the future she didn't deserve to be a part of. Finally, I leaned forward, my voice calm but deliberate. "So, how's work been?" She froze, mid-sip. "Work? Yeah," I said, my gaze unflinching. "All those late nights, the big projects. I feel like we never talk about it." Her smile faltered for just a moment. "Oh, it's fine. Busy, you know?" I watched her carefully, letting the silence stretch until she squirmed. She looked away, reaching for her phone like it was a lifeline. "Who's Mark?" I asked suddenly. The color drained from her face. Her hand froze, hovering over the phone. She looked at me, eyes wide, panic bubbling just beneath the surface. What did you say?" I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. "I asked who Mark is. He seems important to you." Emily opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, her carefully constructed facade crumbling before my eyes. "You're crazy," she whispered finally, her voice trembling. "I don't know what you're talking about." I smirked and pulled my phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen a few times and turned it toward her. The video of her and Mark played silently, the kiss, the touch, the betrayal. Her face went pale. How did you? Don't, I said sharply, cutting her off. Don't insult me with more lies. She sat there, speechless, her hands shaking as the reality of the situation sank in. The game was over. She knew it. This? She stammered, reaching for words. This isn't what it looks like. I laughed bitterly. It's exactly what it looks like, Emily. For the first time, she had no comeback. No excuses. She sat there, stunned and silent, as the truth finally stared her in the face. And I wasn't done yet. Emily's face stayed frozen. Her lips parted, eyes darting between me and the phone. I let the silence linger, letting her stew in the weight of her exposed lies. Is that all you have to say? I asked quietly, my voice calm but edged with steel. She swallowed hard, her hands gripping the table. Where did you get that? Does it matter? I leaned in, lowering my voice. How long, Emily? How long have you been sneaking around with him? She looked away, her breath shaky. I don't know. Wrong answer, I said, cutting her off. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every excuse, every late night, every lie, it was calculated. She blinked back tears. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I laughed bitterly. Oh, you didn't mean to? You just tripped and fell into his arms. Stop, she snapped, her voice breaking. Heads were starting to turn from nearby tables, but I didn't care. For once, she didn't have the upper hand. Stop, I repeated coldly. You don't get to tell me to stop. You made this mess, Emily. You brought him into our life. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders trembling, but I didn't feel pity. Not this time. Does Mark know? I asked, voice low. Does he know I've been watching? Recording. Her head shot up, panic replacing the tears. You didn't? Oh, I did, I said sharply. And trust me, Emily, he's not going to enjoy what happens next. She stared at me, broken, her confident mask shattered into pieces. And I wasn't finished yet. That night, Emily barely spoke. She sat on the couch, phone clutched in her hands, probably texting Mark, trying to salvage what she could. I let her think she still had some control because tomorrow everything would fall apart. Before going to bed, I sent Mark a little gift. An email. Contained the video, the screenshots, and one simple message. You thought you could play games? Game over. Let the fallout begin. The next morning, I woke up early. Emily was already out of bed, her footsteps echoing upstairs as she moved frantically through the house. I took my time getting ready, the calm before the storm. By the time I made it downstairs, she was pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear. Her face was pale, eyes wild with panic. I don't know how he got it, Mark, she hissed. You think I don't feel sick about this too? I cleared my throat, making my presence known. Emily flinched, spinning to face me, her phone still clutched tightly in her hand. Morning, I said casually, pouring myself a cup of coffee. She hung up without a word, her fingers trembling. What did you do? She whispered, her voice raw. I leaned back against the counter, taking a slow sip of my coffee. What did I do? I just evened the playing field. Her eyes narrowed, fury and fear battling for control. You sent it to him, didn't you? The video, the screenshots. How could you do this? How could you do this, Emily? I shot back, my voice sharp. You think you can lie to me, humiliate me, and walk away clean? No, I wasn't going to let you and Mark live happily ever after while I sat here like a fool. Her face twisted. You're ruining everything. Everything was already ruined, I said coldly. You just didn't want to face it. Her phone buzzed again. I didn't have to ask who it was. Mark, no doubt spiraling as his world came crashing down. Did he tell you? I asked with mock innocence. Did he mention how I sent that same video to his boss? Oh, and HR too. Emily's face turned ghostly white. You're lying. Am I? I tilted my head, holding her gaze. Check your phone, Em. I bet Mark's blowing up your inbox right now. She stared at me, frozen. And then her phone buzzed again. This time, she didn't dare look. The fallout was swift. By noon, Mark's social media was wiped clean. No photos, no inspirational posts, just a blank slate where his carefully curated image used to be. Rumors were already spreading through his company. I didn't need to lift a finger to know his indefinite leave was about to become permanent. As for Emily, she stayed glued to her phone, pacing in tight circles as she tried to put out fires that wouldn't stop spreading. "Why are you doing this?" she shouted at me that evening, tears streaking down her face. "Why?" I repeated calmly, standing in the doorway. "Because you didn't just betray me, you disrespected me. You laughed behind my back and thought I'd never find out. Well, now you know what happens when you cross the wrong person." Emily sank into the couch, her face buried in her hands. "I didn't want it to end like this," she whispered. "It ended the moment you made your choice," I replied, my voice soft but unrelenting. "This is just the cleanup." The next day, I packed my bags. I didn't need the house, the memories, or the lingering scent of her lies. Emily didn't try to stop me. She just watched in silence as I zipped up the last suitcase. At the door, I turned to face her one last time. "By the way," I said, holding her gaze, "you should check your family group chat." I thought they deserved to know too. Her face crumpled, and for a brief moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I walked out, letting the door close behind me with finality. As I drove away, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter. Emily and Mark had destroyed my trust, but I'd taken back my dignity. I didn't look back at the house or the life I was leaving behind because the truth was, I didn't need it anymore. This wasn't the end. This was a new beginning on my terms without her lies holding me down. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free.